Your folks to you kids for Christmas, so I'll see how good we can do it. What are the questions? What do you want to find out? You want to know about
I want to know about your life.
my life?
Okay, we're going to start, first of all, with your ancestors. Okay,
My father's name,
let's start with your grandparents.
Edward and Amalia Waltz.
Born?
Born both of them in Nydorf. My mother was born in Niesl Road. I don't know how far apart that was, but eventually she moved to Nydorf. They lived in Nydorf, all of them.
Okay, first three.
The first three boys came out here, I would say about 1908, to Grandma had a cousin that lived in Freeman, South Dakota, and they said that they would take the boys and see that they could earn a little money and send for the rest of the parents. The rest of the parents that were left back there. So they came and they were here maybe 2 years, and then the folks came over. And there was, the three oldest boys that came was Adolf, Fred, and Edward. And then there was John.
Johann?
Johann, yeah, John, and Paulina. No, and Lisa.
Okay.
And then Christian, Andrew, and Christoph.
Okay, we'll start. First of all, there was the three boys that came over.
Yes.
Adolf, Friedrich, and Johann.
Johann.
No,
No,
Edward.
Edward.
And then Johann,
John,
Luisa,
Louisa,
Andreas,
Andrew,
Paulina,
Paulina,
Christoph,
Christoph.
and Aunt Lydia was born on the way over?
No, she was about 5, I think, when she came. No, she was 5, I think, when she came.
And then there were two more that were born here.
There were 2 that were born here,
Christian.
Christian and Amelia.
Okay. Did they bring over another grandmother?
They brought their grandmother, that's right. Her name was Louisa. I will tell you later on what I remember about her. She lived with
her
Grandma.
maiden name was?
Her name was Daman.
Daman.
Daman,
Okay. Okay, now, the three boys came over, and
Then they...
Uncle Adolf sent for a bride.
Right, which was my mother's sister, Aunt Caroline.
How did they say it in Russia?
Carolina.
So pretty.
Uh,
And she came over, and they lived for about a year, and then...
Then there was another fellow that was sent for my mother.
Feifel.
Yes, and when she got here, he was in jail. They said he had stolen chickens, and I don't know if this is true or what, but that's what the story was. I remember meeting him once when he lived in Milwaukee. Anyway, then she had known my dad from way back there because it was her sister's brother-in-law. So they got married, and it was shortly after she got here, I guess, that they got married. My mother had 5 children, and Caroline and all had about 13. Grandma had 13. There was a big family there, a lot of cousins.
Okay, what kind of work did your grandfather do?
My grandfather was a blacksmith, and Uncle Adolf was a butcher, and most of the rest of them were farmers throughout the years.
And your father?
My father was, he helped Grandpa, but being with Grandpa with the shoeing of the horses and that, he became interested in going out and using horses to breed. And I can remember when my dad got sick, how he came home and left the horse stand in the yard. There were 5 children, Fred.
Your mother and father. First of all, talk about your mother. She came over also from Russia,
Yes.
and
She was born in Niesl Road. Her name is Sophia Bishke.
and she came from a large family also.
Yes, there were 6 girls and maybe 5 boys.
And did they all come over to America also?
No, 4 of them came. Christina, Rosina, Carolina, and Sophia.
And the other ones, their names, do you remember them? Katharina?
There were 2 more. There was a Katarina and a Magdalena. They all ended with A, and we used to try to remember them all, string down, through the month. And then there was a brother John that came over with one of my aunts, and I guess he died before, at an early age.
What were your mother's parents' name?
My mother, they were named Bishke, Michal.
And her name?
My grandmother was Remford, Katharina, or
Remford.
Katharina Remford. I don't know much about them, but I know more about the
Waltzes.
Waltzes.
Before we go too far, a story about your Uncle Matthew, if you want to tell it, just a little bit.
Uncle Matt was younger than my mother. He stayed behind. See, several of the brothers died young. Seems like he was the only boy that survived. That's all I can remember him, because John died, and William died. They called him Willem, and there were other younger ones that died. So Uncle Matt was the only one that I can remember. And I can remember in 1928 when he'd write to my mother, that's before my mother died, and tell her how bad things were there in Russia, and couldn't she send some things because they didn't even have shoes. They had to wear burlap bags around their feet, it was so bad. See, it seems like the Russians were always fighting with the Germans there, and they take everything away that they could. They didn't have many manners at all. There were 5 generations of Waltzes that lived in Nydorf. I have papers to show. And what else can I tell you about? I can remember
Uncle Matthew,
his family.
he was married?
They were separated in 1943 when they were really pounding that they didn't want the Germans there at all. And he left with his daughter, not at the same time, about an hour apart. And they got into Germany, and his wife and family, the rest of them couldn't make it. And through the years, he had this daughter lived out in, they went to Germany first. Doesn't work. They went to Germany first, and from there his daughter went to California, and eventually she wrote and asked my uncle to come out there, and I met him. He lived out there many years. Nice old gentleman, very religious. His biggest problem was that he was separated from his wife. And in 1956, Khrushchev and Eisenhower had gotten together. They were going to make an exchange of prisoners of war because his wife was sent to Siberia with 2 of the children that he had, and one of them was sent down to near Afghanistan. And the stories he would tell about how he tried to get her, and would always send her clothing and money and things like that. And then when it fell through with Khrushchev, his wife just couldn't take it, and she died. But she lived in Siberia, for many years. And
he used to ride a 3-wheeled bike, or
yes, he did.
to go to the grocery store.